Welcome to the Granada House Podcast, coming to you from Granada House Studios in North Park, San Diego.
I'm Hannah Russell, and I'm here with my co-host Kyle Palinok, and together we explore how to live a meaningful, balanced life. Right, Kyle?
That's right, Hannah. We bring real conversations and inspiring stories to help you live life on your own terms.
We have Tyson King with us, everyone.
All right.
And
Tyson,
we are excited to have you because you are our next artist at Granada House, and you have an art gallery opening coming up shortly. So we thought we'd get to know you a little bit. And I actually have no idea where you came from. I just saw you in Granada House the other week while I was sitting at the desk.
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy? And then
who's that handsome man over there?
Right, putting some art on the wall.
He's
and then
good-looking.
we were deciding who we wanted to interview, and I was like, why don't we interview the next artist? So I asked Kyle how he found you.
Yeah.
And that was
It's a good story. Well, you know what? I'm
should
excited.
start there.
You know what? You tell it because I haven't heard it from your perspective.
Okay.
These two random dudes roll up.
It was Little Italy Art Walk,
Yeah,
correct?
Art Walk,
Okay,
yeah.
so you came to my booth with your son.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your son actually was the one that was most interested in the artwork.
Yeah.
Which does
Exactly.
tend to be a theme. I think children, they see the colors and it attracts them.
Okay.
And then his excitement sparked your excitement, and then that all sparked my excitement.
Yeah. Let's just say my son has some pretty good taste.
Yeah.
I was all about it. Normally, I don't walk up to an art walk and just there's thousands of artists and be like, yeah, sure, pick one out. You know, it's like, hey,
He's also very curious. He asks a lot of questions.
He knows what he wants.
You got the right client.
Yeah. Okay. So,
and that show specifically, I mean, there's 500 artists. It's booth on booth on booth. It's a lot. And for a kid to specifically pick that booth out and that piece, it got me excited. And then we got talking. I mean, this was, a year or two ago?
I think it was like April. So it was almost a year because it wasn't in April.
Yeah, so coming up on a year.
And I was like, hey, we do this stuff at Granada House. You should maybe. And
So
then we were kind of in touch, but not really. And then.
I thought this was something that happened recently. I didn't know it was.
I mean, no. Bodhi has this painting like by his bed, and he like looks at it like every day. And
cute.
It's got this brilliant. It's a print on wood, right? Is what we got.
It's a print on wood.
Yeah,
and I will have a
bunch
few of those at the show.
Oh, cool.
I have another actually really funny story now that I think about it.
Do it.
Very similar.
Yeah.
I was doing another art show, and I had kind of like this vortex style painting. And maybe a 2-3-year-old, I don't know what age do they start walking? 3?
Oh, a little bit younger than that. Usually like 1 to 1.5.
I obviously don't have kids
yet.
Out of nowhere, this kid leaves his family dead sprint, but kind of like stumble running, that young, and just goes full sprint dead into the painting. Boom!
Oh.
Almost knocks everything over. And my first reaction was like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, pick the kid up. The kid's confused. I'm confused. And then the parents like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, give the kid back to him. And then I look at the painting, and then it clicks. That was like the best compliment I've ever been given.
So it's like a trippy vortex, and he was like into it.
He went full blast into the painting.
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, that was a compliment.
That's so rad. So you love doing these art shows.
Yeah.
You've got to love it. I mean, it's got to be a grind too, right?
Well,
you're up there. You're like, here's your stall, and they probably treat you like sheep or something because they're just trying to, right? But,
yeah, and with that many artists, it's hard to stand out. It's hard to look different. But when you're creating these things, you're in a room by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm spending so much time internally trying to create these things, and then finally bring them out to the public. And I mean, when it translates, it's like fireworks in your brains. The neurons are like fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's seeing that connection. It's like, okay, like you're actually translating something for these people.
When you're making these, are you envisioning its end, not its end result, but its where it's going to be featured? You're like, wow, once I finish with this, it's going to be displayed here. We're going to create a vortex, and 2-year-olds are going to get tripped up. Like, do you foresee something?
I'm imagining like this herd of children coming into Granada House in a month's time.
Come children, come to the vortex. You have unlocked Yeah, but there is something to that. I will say, if you can get the kids, and then what are the kids are your best sales.
They're
people,
honest
because they're gonna be like, mom, dad.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we got to a point with Bodie there, and I was kind of like, oh, how much is all this? You know, but he, you know, and I'm glad you had, because your originals are amazing. But the prints turned out well, and they're well priced, and so I was like, yeah, I mean, like, look, this is like a special thing. He was, and it's, you know, it's good when you have that, but also if you can get kids locked in, and then they're going to be.
I mean, at the end of the day, I create it in my own space, in my own world, from my own head. I don't take a lot of inspiration from other art. So whatever comes out, and who that translates to is completely out of my hands. Whether it be a child, an adult, or an elderly, you know.
It's for you.
I've sold a painting to an 80-year-old woman, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, like this, like. Screw the markets. Like, wherever it goes, it goes.
Yeah.
But if you're connecting to somebody, that's what it is, and that's why we do it.
Yeah.
Oh man, we have a lot of questions. This is gonna be good.
I mean, the first thing that I noticed, and I'm looking at our little friend here. So if
I brought a friend. If you guys can see this.
If you're listening, you can't see, but if you want to check us out on YouTube, you can see this nice little guy that doesn't have a name yet, but he's very colorful. And I feel like all your work is extremely colorful. And I am like a child. I'm a big fan of the color. Is that something that you intentionally do? You just love the color, or?
Absolutely. Also, one thing to note is none of the colors are mixed. So I paint
I
color
read
for
that was the
color.
first thing that stood out. So you do that, but you juxtapose them very closely, and it creates a different vivid feeling, right?
So I go one color at a time, one brush at a time. So I'll pick red, and I will paint on this thing for 1 hour with one brush and one color. And I will figure out where that looks best. And then I'll let it dry. I'll pick something else up. And then I'll come back, and then I'll find, okay, what's going to go next to that well? And it's usually primaries, blues and yellows. All right, let's pick up a blue, and I'll paint for an hour just in blue.
Okay.
And I'll work just off of that. And then you just slowly build it out. But I do pick positive, optimistic colors.
Yeah.
Typically primaries, because I think that's an uplifting energy. Hence the reason the children like it.
And me.
The motion of all of your different strokes, and you see this really like clear corresponding tone. It's very psychedelic, you know. It's very like interconnected, and it breaks apart. I think I love how it deconstructs things where you close them out and you identify, like, this is one thing, this is another. Like, looking at that, you chose to split this one down the middle. You also have like an element of duality in there too, which is interesting. So
this one specifically was for a music festival originally, where we split a canyon in half of heaven and hell themes. So one theme was all hell, one theme was all heaven. So that was the split. Shout out Duck Duck Roar if you're watching this. That was the original for this. But now I bring it all kinds of festivals.
Did I see pictures of something you did at Lake Paris? Was that?
Yeah, same but different. You did music
same
festival.
but different.
Also, shout out to them. They're
What
great.
year?
They're blowing up. The last 3 years in a row.
So it got canceled this year. So I thought it got canceled.
No,
wait,
same
that
but
was
different.
the other one in the same area. What was it called? But no, I think I may have seen. My band played there. Well. We played on Sunday in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I think I saw your stuff because I saw it on your website, and I was like, wait, that looks really familiar. And there was like 3 people. Right, in the sand.
Yeah, and
that's wild.
I had a pyramid with grass on top of it.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, so the music festivals, I try to do stuff that's a little bit more interactive like this, outside of the canvas. But I was also painting live. That festival's wonderful.
Yeah.
Painting live. Is that nerve-wracking for you in any way?
Yeah.
It is?
I used to hate it. Now I've gotten used to it because I've gotten enough gigs now to where I just let it go. But yeah, it's very difficult because I usually paint alone in a room by myself, and I paint very slow.
Right.
So I'll wait for the paint to
wait
dry.
for it to dry. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. I was like always that kid that mixed the colors. But
so I used to think it wasn't theatrical enough. But people just want to see how it's done. So I just do you. And that's all art needs to be, right?
Right.
So I would at least get the painting started before I got there at first, and then I would just work on what I can. And then I realized, like, nobody knows what they're doing at these things. Like, as long as you paint.
And I mean, that's how it starts anyway, even if you're alone in your room, is you're just painting and figuring it out as you go. So I can understand why people want to watch that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a dancer, and I feel like it's like similar when we improvise on the spot. Sometimes the greatest things come out in those moments, and then other times it's like, oh, that was like not great, but
you just play it off. You just play it off like that. Oh,
but
I meant
like
to do
that's
that,
where creativity starts. You know,
Right.
you've got to mess around with it and then refine it.
I do think it's very similar. I think I'm painting with a brush. It's all rhythms.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this, I'm not actually painting anything. I'm just moving. I'm finding rhythms within the brush.
I like that. It's like musical as well.
It is. Gosh, my brain's going crazy with different.
We've got a dancer,
yeah,
a musician, and a painter, but we're talking
last
about
episode,
the same thing.
we talked about like, oh, we're gonna have guests on this, so hopefully we're not really talking about ourselves a lot. So we took that episode to talk a little bit about. But I think we do share this, like, there is this way of expressing yourself creatively, and you find a flow. They call it like flow state, or they. But I mean, getting into like what we want to know about, you know, about your experience in here is actually on that topic, and it's about, you know, like you're not just hobbying it up. You're not like, I mean, you're all in. Like this is you've jumped in both feet. You're doing this. You have plenty of art. You're doing all the shows. You're making it. I mean, in a way that's, let's talk about making it. Let's talk about like the process and the why and the how, and let's get into the meat a little bit. You know, like what, like, okay, maybe I'll start with this because I think you're ready. What is something that kind of freaks you out, that you then get over and you just say no, that keeps you going. So both what scares you and then what brings you back to like, no, I'm doing this, and this is how I want to do this.
Well, it's always just the next step. So first it was like, do I showcase my art live? Do I paint live? Do I apply for an art gallery? Do I do a music festival? Every step along the way is that feeling. It's every single one of them. But you learn that it's like, well, they all work out. Yeah. And if they don't, they work out the next time. So like, I think that fear is there every step along the way.
So you have this way of thinking that is just keep going and just let that be the path.
Absolutely.
Is there like a moment where you made a decision to go one way, and I think we were talking about this earlier today, that decision led you to something really great, but at the time you didn't really know what it was going to bring? It's like you have all these crossroads. You're like, do I do music festivals? Do I do gallery showings? Like, is there a moment that you can remember where you made a choice and you're like,
I kind of have a weird upbringing with that. So they would say like, oh, where'd you learn to paint? How long you been doing art?
Yeah.
And I kind of just jumped headfirst in.
Right.
I didn't touch a paintbrush until I was in my 20s.
Okay.
So I started traveling the world first right after high school, and just tried to experience the world, learn a lot about it. And I got inspired. I came home and I needed a utensil. I needed some sort of tool to translate my experience and what I was going through at the time. My mom was an artist, so I think there is some sort of genetic...
you had an influence that was like, oh, I could try that.
Like, she didn't teach me how to do it, but at the same time, like, I think it's ingrained in the genes. I think, like, I was able to figure out right away for a reason. But as soon as I picked it up, I mean, I was in my mid-20s and just started painting, and as soon as I saw the color spread, like the color theory in my mind, like I was saying earlier, like my neurons were fireworking.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like I know that I can do something with this. And I didn't know how to really draw real well or like come up with a concept, but like I could play with color, like in a childlike mind.
You know what it reminds? So another thing today, we're kind of like doing a little background on you, and seeing more of your stuff, and it clicked what all of your stuff reminded me of. Like, remember when I don't know I think Hannah had this experience, but you have these floor tiles and you make these little color blocks and patterns with the different things. Like, that's such a nice feeling when you create something like that even as a kid, and it allows you to express your creativity. Do you get that same kind of sense of like, you look at your stuff that you do and you're like, man, this is peaceful, this is fun? Do you feel like
it's a sense of meditation,
right?
Really?
Yeah, that's what I'm going for.
It settles the frontal cortex of your brain, and then your subconscious kicks in, and the creativity just starts leaking out. But like, you're just doing. You're not actually thinking like, it needs to be this or it needs to be that. It's just coming out. I do think a lot of that is genetic, of being like, okay, well, we need to kind of bring it back this way or bring it back this way for no reason at all. You just know that.
Did you find your style like right away when you first did your first ones when you were 20, or did you like, that was good, let's do that again?
I thought they were good at the time. I look back now and I'm embarrassed, but like, they sold. But yeah, so
well, because you're nichey. It's like a very much like, I think I like that as a, call me a consumer or something. Like, you look at your whole booth or you look at your portfolio, you're like, well, that's just his style, and he does that really well. And it's nice because you attribute that to you. And I think some artists and different, think they want to broaden all their different ways of doing it, but I think sometimes it gets confusing as to what identifies them, you know what I mean? So
I think I've stayed true to staying in the zone of what I think I want it to be, and I just build on top of that.
Yeah.
But literally year one, back to what I was saying, is like, year one, I put it on the wall and tried to sell it. I mean, $30, $40, $50, and that was a win.
Yeah.
And it's no different than the win I'm getting now. If I get a couple $1,000 mural, it's the same feeling, it's the same win.
Yeah.
And it's the same fear. So it's just one fear overcome, it's one more accomplishment, but it's the same thing. It doesn't feel better now than it did then.
Right.
And every year I've just kind of doubled down, and the art's gotten better every year.
But you've just consistently been doing and consistently been putting it out and celebrating in that as you go until it has become what it is now. And I think that's really good advice for everyone. Just
I think it's important to realize that like the bigger wins are not better than the smaller wins. Like,
absolutely,
each win builds on the top of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you can't control the end result, but you can make something new, right? Is that kind of what you're saying? You're like, well, to keep moving forward, I have to just keep creating. You're not going to be able to control whether it's that one particular piece is sold or not. That's for someone else to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I saw in a bin. This just like tweaked my brain. I saw her in a bin once, or a trash can, because we're in America, in New York.
Yeah, that helps.
It was
Thanks.
this guy.
Translate the bin.
Yeah, translating.
What kind of bin?
The laundry bin.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just discovering all these words that
This is fun. Yeah.
When I was in New York, I took a photo of it years ago, and it was like this really well painted trash can, and it was very colorful, and it said "Create with Courage."
Yeah.
And that just like, it reminded me of, putting it out there and then selling it and then making more and just like taking the bigger steps.
Like lean into the vulnerability.
Not like withholding your art because you're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, but just like putting it out there. I love that.
Well, creativity in this whole process of the whole podcast, and what we're going to keep picking your brain about is about courage, because courage is as defined by we're animals of this planet that have evolved to protect ourselves with fear, but then that gets in the way of too much of our cognitive thought, right? So the courage for us is often just battling our own thoughts, right, about like what could happen. So this meditative process, the creative process that I'm already hearing you say, I mean, you're finding that, right? So but let's get a little bit under the hood. Like, where did you grow up? Like, where are you from?
So I grew up in Lake Arrowhead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like 2.5
That's awesome.
hours from
I've
San
actually
Diego.
never been, but our family was just talking about going up there for a few days just to check it out. Like,
small town,
small community,
one
south of
stoplight,
Big
one
Bear.
high school. Stoplight was not there when I lived up there. But I've been in
It's
San
kind of like
Diego.
a resort, not resort, but like second home.
Yes,
vacation
tourism.
place. Yeah.
Airbnb is taken over.
Yeah.
But yeah, grew up there, moved down here straight after high school when I was 17.
Okay.
Lived down here for most of my life at this point. And then, just did a lot of international travel.
Nice.
Kind of skipped most of the college, did kind of the community college for a year, travel. Community college for a semester, travel. And I did this for like
Are you like the vagabond backpacker? Like, did you do the whole...
Yes, I did.
You solo travel or...
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
I did one trip specifically from the Philippines all the way to India.
Nice.
Ooh.
Did all Central America. Lived in South Korea.
That's crazy.
I know.
I did a backpacking trip through Central America. Also lived in Korea for a couple of years. Did Philippines with who's my wife now.
No wonder we connected.
I mean, no, but I'm not. This is not a comparison. This is like, wow. It's nice to be able to relate to being and seeing different things around the world.
Absolutely. Right. And I think that stuff gets stored up there and then it slowly leaks out. For me, it's through the color. For you, it's probably through a rhythm. Or for you, it's like literally like a motion. I do think we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the different fields of the arts. And I don't even think we've tapped into what that truly means. But I think there's a reason we connect when like we hear a song or you see a painting and like we're like, we kind of know what that is.
Yeah.
Like, why?
I kind of like want to just go and meditate back on. I want to look at old pictures and I want to think about the things that have settled in my brain now, and then go think about the things I saw and just try to make some more sense of things that way. Because there's so many different cultures that more of this is ingrained. Like they're more established cultures, for example, and you can see the wisdom that's built in to their ways of life, right? But we're young here, us Americans. Australians, I can say
we're even younger,
quite young as well.
Yeah.
But that's actually kind of more the next question is like we're trying to uncover little treasures in these interviews, and to also inspire people to what we say, live life on your own terms, like have the courage to truly be yourself, but knowing that you have to navigate this world. Like living in, for example, San Diego, we all know it's even relatively a very expensive place to live. So I think like a lot of people grow up and they have different ways that they were raised about like how to do life, and we go through a point in our lives where we're like, I don't know. Am I doing this wrong? Is this okay? And you have your own little barometer. And I think what we're trying to do is empower people to take certain steps like that would be equivalent to certain steps that you've taken, right? But we want to know like what is, so that being said, like you've got to have a different definition of success, for example, than probably others out there, or maybe the traditional sense, or like what are some things that you, I guess, strive for? What are some things that you look forward to do? And I heard you say take the next step, right? Keep going. We say in our family, what's next? Having a hard time, well, what's next? Yeah. Let's go past it.
Well, I think for me, like I had to turn off the concept of like you're an amateur artist or you're a professional artist. I was working this job, and the job was paying me more to do the artwork than it was to do the job, because I was doing both for them. And I was kind of getting excited about it. And one of the managers pulled me aside, and he was kind of picking my brain. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm trying to do this. I'm doing a little bit of that. And I was listing all of the things I was doing, but in my mind, it like wasn't. I'm like, I'm not quite doing it, because it's like that's the ego. And he looked at me. He goes, "You're doing it. Like you're doing it. Like whatever you think you're not doing, like you just explained to me you're doing it." And in my mind, I was like, okay, if that can make sense at this level, then that's all it will ever be. Like every step you take, that's all it is. Like you're actively doing something. Okay, I'm working on a painting. I'm doing a show at the Granada House. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I better get that gallery show next. I better get that mural next. It's like, no, I have a show at the Granada House on March 8th.
It happened. We will make sure that we lock in these details, because we hopefully a lot of our listeners are like going to actually show up and be there.
But to anyone listening, keep that in mind. Like if you are creating and you have a place to show whatever it is you're creating, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And like it can grow, it can evolve, but like that's all it ever is.
Yeah. And your level is your level. Yes. And you decide how good that is.
Yes.
And like your level that you think maybe is, it might not be so great to someone else. It's extraordinary.
Right?
So you just need to keep going on your own journey. Like, I love that. Okay, well, we should talk about Granada House Art Show for a second.
Sure.
What are you most excited about for bringing your art to Granada House? Because we have a different kind of space.
Yes. Well,
this has added a lot of color to it. It's very colorful right now. Yeah.
Well, that's where the collaboration comes in.
Yeah.
I have the artwork, and I've been sitting on so much artwork that I haven't had a space where I can show that much. So I'm so excited to collaborate with you guys because you have the creative space.
I'm curious what your first impressions were. Were you confused? Like, what is it? Or because we get that stuff.
Well,
yes.
Of course.
He just says yes.
I kind of love it. It annoys me, but I love it.
Because then we have to talk about it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
You know.
But that's also life, right? Yeah. Like everyone wants to put everything in a box, and it's like it doesn't have to.
Be.
Yeah.
You nailed it. So I call it an evolution, but so this is it. I don't know. Like,
we're doing a podcast, but maybe we'll talk about mortgages after this.
Yeah, well.
But like I'm excited to collaborate. The space itself is beautiful, and it's right next to the observatory, which is arguably the best music venue in all.
I know, right? We're spoiled
are.
With our location.
Yeah,
absolutely spoiled.
It's crazy how many like small little jams we have or different little events, and then when that gets out, people are still trying to like get out and do stuff, and so they'll trickle in, and we'll just all of a sudden be flooded with people.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, North Park's a creative.
It's a creative hub.
Yeah.
Even just like all the art around the neighborhood as well. It's just such a good vibe. I love it.
But our art shows are going to be like they're going to be fun. They're going to be like what you would want. Like there's going to be drinks. We'll have music. We'll have just awesome people. We'll have obviously Tyson like showing off like there and being able to talk about all the pieces. And I mean, it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. So that's March 8th, everyone. March 8th, 6 p.m.
Something like that. Yeah, I think usually start at 6.
Yeah, follow us on the socials so you
Speaking of, how can we follow you?
Yeah.
So, just remember my name, Tyson King. Tyson King Art on Instagram, TysonKingArt.com on the website. Pretty simple.
Okay. I feel like we should ask this question because I feel like we're going to ask it to a lot of our guests. But
let's do it.
If you could look back on your journey.
Wait, hold on. We have to hype it up. Put on your serious face.
Clapped the microphone.
We were specifically waiting until later in the interview to drop this one because you have to get ready. But go for it.
Looking back on your journey.
Okay.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone striving to build a life that truly aligns with who they are?
The most true, honest advice I could give is stay true to yourself. Like his son came to my art booth that day because he recognized something unique. And he even said, like, your stuff looks different. And I always say the best compliment I ever get at those shows is like, your booth feels different than the others. And it's like, okay, I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
I am staying true to like the unique fingerprint of my evolution.
Yes.
No one else can do me. So if I can stay as true to that as possible, and whatever comes out, comes out. And it's working, but I think it's because I'm staying as true as possible.
Yeah, and you are unlike anyone else, so
no one can copy that.
Exactly.
They can try,
it. Yeah.
But if I do it as true as possible, it is one of one. So I'd say that's your leg up on everyone else in the world.
I agree, absolutely.
That's very. I feel like there's like tons of like Rick Rubin vibe. Do you know?
Love Rick Rubin.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, that's what he says basically all the time, and I love it. I only just recently in this last year maybe, but I think I struggle with this like as a musician. I mean, I'm like, well, what should I start? Like, what kind of music should I make? Like, what are people gonna like? Just like, no, just like put out something. I definitely am an overthinker, so I think that's great advice. No matter what, find you and do you, but then don't worry about if someone doesn't like it, maybe, right?
Which is a hard thing to do, but you know.
How often do you ask for feedback on your...
at those same art shows, I'll look around at the booths next to me, I'm like, oh God, I shouldn't even be here. Like, my stuff's not even good at, like, the ego still tells you you're not enough.
That's just who we are as humans.
Yeah, it's like this, I'm not worthy, but it's like, but then you graduate into it, and before you know it, you are worthy, right?
Yeah.
Or
as soon as I sold my first painting for, I think it was $20 and it was $50, in my mind I was like, okay, it exists in the world as something that people like. And whatever scale that is, like I can tell myself it's good enough or it's not. But at the end of the day, like I'm convinced that it's worthy. So we can raise that bar to whatever where we need to raise it. And I do raise it every year, but at the end of the day, like I convince myself that day. So just keep that in mind. Like,
and you just naturally, you get better by practicing your craft, right?
Yes.
I mean, so it's probably cool to see how your own stuff has evolved, like knowing from the source, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird.
It's
like,
so cool.
If you'd have told me this is what I was going to be doing, like I look at a painting like this, and I'm like, it's weird, but it's where my brain goes, so that's where we go.
Very cool.
I mean,
yeah,
it's cool.
No, I love it. I love the
Well,
color.
for anyone watching the video, I mean, is it for sale?
Oh, everything.
Okay.
Kyle, should we daisy chain it?
Okay, so this is like a new concept. Now, you are our first guest, so we had to start
Thank you,
this.
by the way.
And thank you for
Yeah.
helping us break the ice. I mean, talk about not knowing what is the right thing to do. I mean, we're just trying to do that right.
Yeah.
Right now. So we thought of this idea where you don't know who the next artist is going to be, or sorry, it may not even be an artist.
You
right?
might be a business person.
Next guest is going to be. So you get to ask a question for just a random person, and they have to answer it. But it had to start somewhere. So you could ask them, what's your favorite color, and that's it. Whatever, easy, right? Or you could ask them, what's the meaning of life? It's a random grab bag.
Or like, what's their favorite snack? Like anything.
So for this one, I just had someone that didn't know what we were doing say, I want you to ask a question for somebody that's going to get a question.
Ooh, okay.
But actually, it was a pretty good question, I'd say. And the question is, from random person, what is the number one thing you've come to appreciate only recently in the last 6 months of your life? So something you recently just came to appreciate.
Ooh, okay.
It's kind of tough, but maybe you can jog your memory. Recent.
Well, I mean, big one. I just got engaged in December.
Hey!
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
So that's within the last 6 months.
Ooh,
Have you appreciated
2
engagement?
months. Yeah, shout out to my beautiful fiance.
Congratulations.
So yeah, I mean, that is a whole new step in a direction of uncharted territory,
Wow.
which is very similar to an art career. You know, I don't know anything about being married or stepping into
Neither
a
does
serious
anybody.
relationship. But it's like, okay, let's get the first win. Let's get the second win, you know?
Nice.
So, yeah, that is my new current appreciation. And I'm very excited to see where that takes my art journey. Dabbling into dissecting love and
Awesome.
marriage and children and life.
Yeah, that's
That
going
would
to come
be-
out on the canvas differently. I'm sure
Oh,
very colorful.
It better.
Yeah.
So do you want some good marriage advice from
Yeah, let's
Okay.
For
hear
Mr.
it.
Marriage
I'm
advice
ready.
right now?
No, you see you failed. So that was a test. Don't take any advice.
Don't take advice.
Okay.
Because
that's
people
good,
don't
yeah.
know how to have kids and they don't
Yeah.
know how to be married. Okay, so
Yeah.
just don't even just again. I'm gonna give you advice without giving you advice, and my
Treat
advice
it like
is
a
stop taking
fingerprint.
it.
Like my own
Yes,
personal
just
journey.
do your thing.
Yeah.
Yes, do your thing.
Yeah.
Trust your
that.
heart and your love.
Okay, well,
great.
I mean, you've answered the question now. So now you get to write one for our next guest. You don't say it
We're not
here.
gonna put you on the spot.
You
Okay.
don't do it here because
So.
we don't want them to know what it is. So
Okay.
Well, that was like super fun. I mean, I could just keep going, but
Yeah.
that
Well,
was. I feel
March
like
8th, we'll
I feel-
continue the
yes,
conversation.
March 8th, come on
Yeah.
out. Oh gosh,
follow
that's
us
gonna
on
be
the
great.
socials so that you know everything that's happening because we always like to
And-
have exciting things at these art opening.
And
Nice.
your gallery is going to be up for some time to come.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah,
I
stop
brought
in
more
the
pieces tonight too.
and you'll have prints for sale. You have the metal prints, you have the wood prints, you
Yep.
have big ones, you have small ones. Do you have paper stuff?
Yes.
Cool. So there's something for everyone.
Flower pots. We're gonna do
There's
it all.
Flower pots.
colorful array of. It reminds me. So we had an artist, Barbara Smith, that had a lot of different colors, but more pastels and flowy and blendy. This is really cool because it still brings a ton of. This is one of my favorites. Like a lot of color. So the space looks absolutely beautiful right now. Thank you for, saying yes to that. I'm so glad this worked out. Perfect timing, even
Yeah.
though it was a year later almost. And just thanks for
Well,
being
I know
here.
now. I thought you just knew him for 3 months.
Yeah,
but,
right.
You know.
Oh, this random dude from Little Italy. No.
Okay, yeah. Follow us at Granada House so that you can see everything that's going on in the next few months. And follow Tyson King.
Woo.
Tyson King Art.
Tyson
At.
King Art.
All right.
Yeah.
Over and out.
All
Thanks.
right. See you next time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.